Ready?
Steady.
Go.
Here at Lloyds Banking Group, there's no such thing as just an apprentice. I'm in a position to say whether our products are fair, ethical and designed to help Britain prosper.
That moment when you realise you're in a team managing over £150 billion in funds.
It isn't all finance all the time. I led a partnership with Macmillan to help our customers access better cancer care.
Everyone knows you can trust Lloyds. I've seen our bold sustainability commitments and every day I see us following through.
1 minute I'm leaving uni with my sports science degree. The next I'm in a room thinking of ideas to help millions of families during the pandemic.
I work in financial crime, international sanctions. As you can imagine, it's a pretty interesting place to be right now.
1 minute you're reading about the cost of living crisis and the next you're writing a briefing paper on it.
Off the back of my dissertation on DevOps pipelines, I went into an engineering role and now I'm rolling it out company-wide.
We all got million subscription nowadays, so my team built a tool that helps 18 million customers manage them in our app.
When it's not developing with React or Redux, it's gaming with the other grads or the odd night out.
I couldn't be prouder of my outreach work through Lloyds, helping school-age girls and non-binary people get into coding.
My next step, go for an associate director role, either in my team or something new and exciting. How's that for a rotation?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Elaine from Lloyds Banking Group, and please let me welcome you to Lloyds Careers Live. So the summer is almost here, and if you're joining us from Scotland, of course, your school holidays have already started. So last month, you might remember my colleagues Ian and Gronya, they took us through the interesting world of careers in data science and data analytics. So this month, we're going to mix things up a little bit and look at things a bit differently. And we're going to look today more widely at things like careers for creatives. So as it's the summertime and people are here, there and everywhere, out and about at various different careers fairs and events, I've tracked down some really interesting people with even more interesting stories to tell you all about potential career pathways if creativity is actually your kind of thing. So you might be thinking to yourself, what does a bank have to do with creativity? Well, the reality is that technology is driving change absolutely everywhere. Banking has always been one of those fields that's harnessed the power of automation and technology. So looking back to the middle of the last century, the earliest computers were deployed by banks to take over the manual tasks of keeping everybody's accounts in order. In the 1970s, before many of us were born, we saw things like the ATM, the cash point, appear on high streets where people could actually get money out without even speaking to somebody. So during COVID, you know, we all got used to tapping and paying for goods, thanks to chips that are buried within our plastic cards. And now millions of people interact with their finances through apps on their phones. So all of that takes invention and creativity. And careers in creativity really exist everywhere in all different sectors of the economy. It's obviously the way that we build our future. But anyway, enough about the history lesson. Tonight we're going to be hearing from a few of my colleagues. So first up, we're going to hear from Kieran, who's going to tell us all about the power of design thinking and customer experience design. Now, anybody who's designing a new product or a new service knows that to make things a success, the customer experience is really at the heart of all of it. So Kieran's going to tell us what he does and give you some inspiration on how you could make this part of your actual career thinking. So we've also got Tom. Tom works for Lloyds Banking Group's people function, and when he's not that, you can find Tom swimming in the cold seas off the coast of Plymouth or somewhere on social media as a storyteller. Now, storytelling is a real key creative skill. You know, it's useful for jobs, but actually it's also very useful in securing a job. And Tom's going to tell us all about what he does with some hints and tips for successful storytelling. After Tom, we're going to hear from my colleague Ellen, who's actually joining me live here today to look at her career and look back, and she's going to talk about how her love for art and drama has taken her in what would seem to be an unusual direction to where she started. And finally, my colleague Jen from the apprenticeship team is going to be telling us all about some of the apprenticeship schemes that we've got here at Lloyds Banking Group that link to creative careers. So, as you know, we're all about the interaction. So you can interact with us tonight by using the chat function in Zoom, which I can see in front of me here. So let me just test it all out with you guys. If you could put into the chat function whereabouts you're joining us from this evening. So I'm here in London. Be great to see how far and up and down. Oh, big up to East London, Leytonstone, Sunderland, Chelmsford, Wiltshire. Oh, we're all over the place. Milton Keynes, Farnham in Surrey, Coventry. We've actually got someone all the way from Malaysia. Well, what can I say? Welcome to you. West Yorkshire, Scotland. Ah, brilliant. Well, it's nice to meet everybody, isn't it, Selena? So yeah, great. And you're in Edinburgh, so a real mix today of locations, etc. So you're all very, very welcome, and I really hope that you find today's session useful. So up next, well, up first even, is the first of our interviews, which I think I need a break from talking now. So here is my colleague Ian, who you'll often see on Careers Live, if you join us every month, catching up with Tom Kigodi on the world of storytelling.
Okay, so you've got Elaine looking after you on Careers Live, and you've normally seen me. I'm Ian. I'm really pleased to welcome Tom, so I'm in London today, but normally we're both in the West Country when we're at the weekend, but you're even further down into the West Country, aren't you, than I am, because I'm in Bristol, but you're like on your way down, aren't you, into...
I'm Plymouth,
yeah.
Plymouth down in Devon. So I spend a lot of time up in London, or sort of in our key hubs across the country where our teams are. So we're in our places with our people. As I work in the people and places team, I feel that's a really important part for my role. So, but Plymouth today.
And we were just joking aside, there was like, where do you normally have your base? And I was saying mostly on a train, and I guess in Plymouth as well. You spend a fair amount of time traveling from one place to another.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, it's a good way of keeping that creativity flowing, I think, to be honest. For me, it's like creative juices are running when I'm sort of going on trains more than I would have thought. So it's a nice balance, a true hybrid is what I would describe it as. So yeah.
Lovely. All right. Well, my background today makes me look like I'm in some kind of old bank or old-fashioned telephone box or something. I'm actually like in a corner because behind me is Step Up Expo, which is one of the largest careers fairs in London. So behind me there, you can't hear it in the microphone, are 2,000 eager teenagers learning about things, including Lloyds Bank and the virtual headquarters. But today on Careers Live, we're going to talk to Tom about storytelling, because when we started talking about careers for creatives, what we wanted to do is to understand, different disciplines that are in there, and then storytelling is one of those things that we start to hear quite a lot of now, the importance of storytelling. There's so many different ways to do it, whether that's through social media or different apps that are in there as well. And when I think of storytelling, I always think of Tom, which is why I wanted to bring Tom onto Careers Live today. So Tom, that thing is like, we do hear, the importance of telling a story. Storytelling is everything in there as well. Why do you think this has started to become kind of like common currency, so important?
Yeah, so I think stories are really interesting, right? Because it's that we've all got them, and it's something that we can all be part of. We are either a character in our own story, or we're a character in someone else's story, or we're the hero in our own story or in someone else's. Hopefully, we're not the villain in someone else's story, but that you never know, right? But I think the kind of why stories are really powerful is because they encourage us to think and do things and act differently. And I guess often we focus on the kind of what it is we're trying to do, and I guess it's kind of the story almost helps us to communicate the how of that as well, and thinking about how we motivate people and inspire people, and they kind of encourage people to think in a different way. I often say about stories is that by by telling your story, it's a little bit like role models. So there's this kind of concept of you don't necessarily know who you're being a role model for just by being yourself. And I think storytelling is similar. So I think you don't know who you're helping to sort of tell their story just by telling yours. So I think there's a kind of that area of it being around how we're inspiring people to do things and act differently, sharing good news, and talking about the kind of the outcomes that we're trying to achieve through that story lens. But also, like, as things are changing, we're in an environment where things are changing so rapidly, and we're doing so many different types of things using different types of technology. It's a really good opportunity to start experimenting with different ways of telling stories, whether that's in a kind of format like we're doing here, which is kind of I think of that kind of podcasty kind of style, like and people learn in different ways as well. So having that kind of multi-channel opportunity to test different mechanisms for telling stories can really connect with different people and different audiences, I think. So that's why I love stories. I just think it's there's a story in everything. It's just how you tell it.
It's something memorable as well, isn't it? I think there's it feels to me, something in storytelling of it is a way by which, we can transmit information from one person to another. We take the essence of what lies behind a story and then we repeat that and we tell somebody else. And that's how information, and we're, of course, mankind has been doing that since we all sat around a fire, right? And told stories. It's how we pass knowledge down. So in some way, storytelling is this kind of like new vibe that's out there, but something that's been going for millennia before we could write things down and do clever things in PowerPoint.
It's been around for ages, right? And I think it's everybody's got those family stories that you know of, or you repeat, or you sat around the table and those story comes out about this time when this happened, and they're like we've all got our own sort of library of stories in our families. We'll have them. You'll have them with your friends. So it's also, how do you then build those stories at, which books are you taking off the shelf today to share, but also how you start to write your own books as well, right? So, and that can be done on both a sort of from a work level, but also really important from the context of careers, as we're talking about today, is how do you shape the story of you? Like, how do you tell the story of what it is that you do, what it is that you're passionate about? How do you shape the value? Like, so an example of the way I've started to do that around my personal brand is I use LinkedIn quite a lot. I've got quite a lot of followers on there. I didn't even realize till I was with someone the other day and they were like, oh yeah, look, and it's like 4K followers. And I was like, I didn't even know I had that many. But and it's kind of how I use LinkedIn to almost document what I call my hybrid chronicles. That's my kind of regular update I do every couple of weeks about, and it was really designed at the beginning point of when I sort of came out, when we were coming back from to opening offices after COVID, and I was kind of thinking, well, I'm going to just document this because I'm interested in seeing how things progress and change as we sort of open up again, and that's where it started. I've just kind of kept it going because it's almost a bit like a public diary and things that I'm finding from connecting with other people. So there's so many other people that are part of those stories that I'm sharing, a few pictures, but also brings to life like the value and the magic of being together and those connections, which we'd missed for the last couple of years. People seem to like it. People were sort of following, engaging with the content, and there was an opportunity for people to. I've been reached out to quite a few by a few people, few teams from different organisations to talk and start to expand. So it helps to expand the network. I was getting speaking opportunities and requests coming off the back of that as well, just by telling my story. And that was just saying what I was doing on a sort of like a summary of some of the things I've been involved in over the last few weeks. So I think that's the thing. People will say, well, I don't know I haven't got a story to tell. Like, you definitely do. Everybody has. And it's kind of just thinking about how you make a concise version of that with some engaging ways of telling it.
I think that's right. I mean, I'm looking, so behind me here, so in front of me here is a window and it's on High Street, Kensington. So it's really busy, as you can imagine, for a Friday when we're recording this, and there's lots of people busy walking past. And then you think, if you could see those thought bubbles above everybody's heads, I mean, I'm sure there's some that we don't want to see what's inside there. But, there is a story in everything. And sometimes, if we keep everything super, super quiet, nothing actually ever gets shared. And that's the thing with hybrid chronicles is what I like about when I follow your hybrid chronicles is sometimes you're shedding light on the beginning of somebody else's story, and that's all that that's all that it needs, because otherwise I wasn't even aware that this person is trying to do these things, or this person has already done these things. And it's about expanding our networks then through that power of storytelling, which is really important then when it comes to careers. So you've been doing this for quite a while, and we talked about like a bit of the podcast vibe and various other things. So what are you seeing then in terms of like evolution of different ways that people are doing storytelling?
So I'm fascinated at the moment by AI. So I'm really interested in how AI can be a sort of co-pilot in storytelling, and help with the kind of getting you to your point in a really like succinct way, and giving you that kind of some frameworks to work with. So I'm really interested in how that looks. I think video content is and I've been sort of, I think it's just trying to get people to thinking around that kind of less is more concept. How can you say more and tell a story using less? Whether that's less words, less time, like, you know, when you look at like, and I'm probably not the best to talk about like TikTok, but like reels, and you know, the kind of using different channels that we've got as they start to emerge and new channels come out. How do we tell stories on those? But they kind of force you to think, right, well, how can I capture the essence of 2 days in 2 minutes, or 2 days in 30 seconds, right? Because that can give a vibe still, but it's really fast paced and energetic, but it still captures the moment. So I'm really interested in the different technology and how that will enable us to tell stories, because I'm of the believer that technology is only helpful when it enhances our human virtues. The storytelling is human. So how do we use the tech as an enabler to make us more human and focus on those? So I think it's going to be some really exciting new ways that we'll start to see stories come to life with some of those kind of AI tools that are coming through. And, you know, there's some that can help with, I've heard of one which sort of can create videos, but also create images, and how those kind of images you can use those to support. I think it's Mid-Journey is one of the ones I was looking at recently, where it's like you can feed it and it will create you the most perfect image to supplement your story in animation. So you know, it's things like that where I think there's going to be some really exciting times. We start to see these new things start to emerge, and of course, you know, we always see the emergence of new platforms and new channels. Some last, some don't. You know, we've got like things like Be Real. You've got things like you know, what was the one that was around Vine? Was a lot. That's go back in the day a bit now, but do you know what I mean? Like, it's interesting to see them come and go. So I think there's always opportunities, and people are, you know, it's like you said, people have been telling stories for decades, millennia, right? So it's how do we continue to evolve that as we go into this next phase of kind of high tech, high interaction, and how does the technology enable us to tell them in a slightly different way, which is more engaging?
So one of the questions that we quite often get around in Careers Live is people are really interested in how did people get to where they are in Lloyds Banking Group. Now, if I remember rightly, so you've grown up through our branch network to get to where you are now. If I've got that, if I remember correctly in there. So I guess the question that people will be then thinking is, how does storytelling help you in your career? So maybe that's a kind of like, there's a question in there somewhere about how storytelling has helped you move from being, you know, a bank manager for Lloyds Banking Group to now looking after comms and engagement for all of our people functions, and then supporting our executive population, and where you are now. Because I guess if you'd been like the people on the street in High Street Kensington today and just carried on walking by and everything that was in your head just stayed inside your head, then you might still be doing a great job for us in Plymouth, but not unleashing on the world everything that you've managed to do.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? It's kind of, how do I think about... So the one thing I always think about, and it links back to this Hybrid Chronicles, and the piece of advice I would give to everybody, is that the only person that's going to look after your own story is yourself. So it's you are responsible for your story. And yes, sure, some people will help you to tell it, but actually you have got that kind of editorial control over what you want your story to be. So as the way you think about what it is you want to be, what it is you want to be known for, you know, what it is that's your USP in whichever organization you're in, How do you build your story around that, and how do you? So, an example you mentioned there around the branch network, I've always kept that as a real part of my USP, because it means that I can come into a different area and talk about my experiences on the front line serving customers. And I also add that a level of challenge where people say, "Oh, we're going to introduce this process." I'll be like, "Have you ever sat on a welcome desk before? Like, have you gone to speak to a colleague that serves our customers every day? If you haven't, go back there, do that, and come back and talk to me again." Like, because I think it's that, and that's part of my story, right? So my story is that I started as a cashier and I worked my way through a number of those roles, and then I take that knowledge with me and I go and challenge people when there's kind of, when we're trying to do things that I don't think will work and serve our customers in the best way. So it's kind of, you need to create that story for yourself, like whatever that story might be. Everybody brings something unique. Everybody has that USP. It's figuring out what you want yours to be, and then starting to craft that story that you'll take with you, and you'll only then further add to it and develop it. So as I've gone through my career, I spent time in sort of central roles. That was an opportunity for me to learn. I then moved into an innovation role. I was in an innovation team for 5 years. That's where I got that spark for creativity, and I was able to hone in those sort of skills around that. So that became part of my story. And then I moved across into people and places, bringing that innovation and also bringing that cost. So I'm bringing those things, all those things build up to the kind of bigger story of Tom Kagodi. So like, it's how you then think about that. And then again, moving into the role I've moved in now, I was sort of spoke to and there was an opportunity that came up, and actually the way that I've been telling my story and the way that I've been interacting and speaking, and also like was a good sort of front runner for this is who this person is, and can help with some sort of storytelling on a wider level as well. So look after your own story, shape it, and continuously iterate on it to make it the kind of book that you want it to be, so that when you look back over your career in however many years, you think, oh right, this is the book of me. So that's partly why I do my Hybrid Chronicles, right? It's like a personal diary, so that I can look back and think, oh, look at all these cool things I did over the years that I've worked, was in my working career at Lloyds Banking Group. So, I think it's how you look after that, how you nurture it, iterate it. But first of all, the first point is deciding what is the story that you want to have. What is it that is the story of you?
And I love the way, and I think it reflects the conversations we're having here at Step Up Expo today, the way that those layers of your experience, the experiences you choose to get into, create the story of you, which is unique.
Mm-hmm.
And it is your uniqueness that people are buying, and they're not buying somebody else's story, but buying something that is only the story of you. So I think my big thing I've got out of this one is you have to take it out of the bubbles that are in your head and get it out there. Otherwise, people will never understand that unique story of you, and go out there and create experiences that add some new things to that story as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. Our time is up because you're a busy man, and I know we've got to let you go. Otherwise, we could give you the entirety of Careers Live to yourself. But Tom, thank you so much for your time today. All right, thank you.
No worries at all. No worries.
Well, I hope you found that interesting, and have a think about what your own stories might be and how you'd want to tell them. Just to say, if any of you need closed captioning, then you can actually enable that in Zoom as well, just to highlight that to you. So that was Tom. I told you that was going to be interesting. We're going to now look at a recording of a chat that I had with another one of my colleagues, which was last Friday, I think. So my colleague is Kieran, and he's going to tell you a little bit about design thinking. So, I'm really pleased to be joined today by Kieran Hayes, who is one of our colleague experience leads. Thanks so much for spending some time with us to chat today, Kieran.
Hello.
Hello. So can you tell us a little bit, Kieran, about what you do in your day-to-day role, please?
Yeah, I definitely can. Thanks, Elaine. So as you say, I am the colleague experience lead in our people and places team in Lloyds Banking Group. And that means that my job is all about colleague experience, really. In Lloyds Banking Group, we tend to call the people who work for us colleagues, but you might see other kind of companies call it things like employee experience or people experience. But it's really all about the people who work here and how we create really great experiences for them. So really understanding the kind of important moments that matter in a colleague life cycle, whether that's people joining our organization, whether it's them having a baby and going on parental leave, whether it's them looking to get a kind of promotion or develop their career with us. There's all sorts of different moments and points in time, as well as everyday stuff like the technology that they use or our workplaces. But it's really about how do we create great experiences for people.
Yeah, well, it does sound really varied, and I've actually seen you talk a lot about design thinking on a lot of our internal Yammer pages and in internal sites. So can you tell everyone a little bit more about that and what you've been doing?
Yeah, I can, and I would never say I'm an expert in design thinking, but I think as kind of an experienced team and as a people and places team, we're really trying to wrap our arms around and embrace that kind of way of working more. So I always think design thinking feels like a bit of an enigma, and I think if you went on Google and typed in design thinking, you probably find 100 different kind of definitions of what design thinking is. I always try and describe it as it's a way of solving problems that puts people at the center of the approach. So there's all sorts of models around design thinking, and you can find all sorts of different ones like the double diamond. I think IBM call it the loop. We up until recently have called ours the value circuits. There's all sorts of kind of different models and terminology, but I think they all have particular things in common. So the start of it is all really about research, like how do you understand the problem that you're trying to tackle, what's kind of the data that you can get your hands on, can you talk to people to understand it from their perspectives a bit better, and then you kind of go, okay, we've gone really big with the research, let's define that. What's the one problem or the one or two problems that we really want to go and solve, and then you go on to like, let's come up with loads of ideas. How do you kind of solve that problem, and how do you get loads of people involved in that, particularly the people you're trying to improve the problem for. So how do you tap into them and get them to kind of help you come up with ideas, and then can you come up with some kind of prototype or test, and then can you give that a go and learn from it. And I think there's times where you give it a go and you go, oh wow, that wasn't the thing at all. It's a good job we tested it instead of like scaled it out to all our colleagues. And there's times where you go, oh, this has gone exactly as we hoped it would. Let's kind of make that more available to more people. So I think most design thinking kind of processes or models tend to follow those kind of similar steps.
Right. And is it like, would you say it is like, you mentioned some different techniques and models?
Yes.
Would you say it's more about techniques or a mindset really, or is it a combination of both, do you think?
I do think it's a combination of both. I think first and foremost it's mindset. So I think you could learn all the tools and techniques and ways of working and kind of buy the book, go out and try and do them. But if you haven't kind of embraced that mindset, I don't think we'd get very far. So I think it's a mindset, or maybe like a set of mindsets. Being creative, collaborative, empathetic, brave, being okay with failure and things going not how you expect them to, and learning from them. There's a whole kind of like set of mindsets, I suppose, that I think are really, really important to doing design thinking well. But there are also a lot of kind of tools and techniques. So there's so much stuff out there around design thinking and some of the different approaches and tools and techniques you can take. And I was chatting to someone who I think is far more versed in kind of design thinking, working in it for years and years, and they kind of said you can learn design thinking in an hour and then spend the rest of your life like trying to perfect it. So I think there's so much opportunity to practice and try things out. So I do think it's a combination between
of both
mindset and tools.
Yeah, I mean, it does sound really interesting. I mean, how important do you think this is in for people to have in their skill set, would you say?
Yeah, I think it's really important. So I don't think there's any denying that it's most important for people who work in design, whether that's kind of user design or product design, or people who work in experience. I think it's really kind of important in those spaces. But I think it's important to, I guess, more broadly, anyone who works with people and anyone who solves problems, which is probably all of us. So I think we can all kind of take bits out of it. And you can apply design thinking to everyday life, I suppose. Kind of if you're stuck with a problem in your personal life, you could probably go, how do I use some of that stuff to think about the right way forward? And maybe we wouldn't talk about it down the pub because it probably wouldn't really need many friends, but you could take that stuff like through all sorts of
scenarios. Yeah. I mean, from an organisational perspective, how important do you think design thinking is to an organisation?
Yeah, that's a really good question, I think. And I think we talk about design thinking often, whether it's in Lloyds Banking Group or kind of outside in loads of different companies, about it kind of like a new shiny thing. I think the reality is that the kind of principles of design thinking have been around since as early as the 1960s. So that there is that kind of question of, okay, why is it important now? You probably ask like 100 different people that question and get 100 different answers. I think my answer to that is it's really important to organizations now because of the pace of change that we're seeing. So whether that's societal or in technology or in a different field, I think things are changing so quickly. So much about design thinking is understanding what do people need. And I think those needs are changing all the time based on the kind of change that we see in a broader society in general. So I think the big challenge with designing at the moment is I think you could ask someone questions about their kind of experience today, and then you might ask that same person the same kind of question 6 months later, and they might give you totally different answers. I mean, that's really interesting for us in the employee experience space, because I think so much of expectations around what our people expect in work is shaped by the experiences they have outside of work, and those are changing all the time. So I think there's kind of this Venn diagram, I think, of people needs and then like the business needs, and design thinking really operates in that overlap of going, okay, where do those two things come together and how do we add value to that quickly? And I think that's where design thinking is really important to organizations, because it allows us to get to value quicker. It might actually take a little bit longer to get to the kind of answer. It would be far quicker, I think, to go, I'm going to go into a dark room and think about the problem and come up with an answer and build a solution. And so much of design thinking is it's a team sport, so you don't do it on your own, you involve other people, and that does sometimes take a little bit longer. But I think it's the getting to value quicker bit that's really important. So you're more likely to get the right solution that adds value by involving other people. There was some McKinsey research that kind of shows that companies that embrace a design-led approach outperform those that don't and increase revenue more quickly. And I suppose that's kind of the business case for working in this way.
No, it sounds really interesting, and I like the analogy of it being a team sport as well. I really like that.
You definitely can't design and think alone. It's
on your own.
You need to involve other people.
For sure. And what would you say, just lastly, to anybody who wants to find out more about design thinking? What would you suggest?
Good question. I'd suggest Googling it. Other search engines are available, but I go to Google. So there's so much stuff out there, and there's so much content out there that's available for free. So I'd say if anyone was sat there going, I want to learn more about design thinking, get on Google and search for some stuff, read articles, watch TED Talks. I think there's even like free courses that some really quite prestigious either kind of educational facilities or companies are kind of offering at the moment, because it's such an important thing. I think there's probably a couple of maybe hints and tips from me on that. I think one is don't be put off by language. So you'll find that actually design thinking, it does have, you'll go on Google and you might type in design thinking. You might start with double diamond, which is a good search term to kind of understand a bit more about design thinking. It's one of the models. But you'll probably come across terms and go, I have absolutely no idea what that means. And I'd say not to be put off by that. You find if you search for that term, there's probably like a really simple kind of explanation about what that means, but things are kind of in particular ways that we can talk in a common language with other designers. So I say don't be put off by language, and don't feel like there's one right way. So I think I touched on earlier different models. Don't feel like, oh, I've read one article about one model and this is design thinking, this is how it's done. Because you probably find you then onto a different article that talks about different ones. So I mentioned double diamond. That's a good one to kind of start with, but don't feel like that's it. That's how we do it. I mean, there's talk of triple diamonds and as I say, loops and all sorts of things. But I think it's really just trying to find the commonality between all those different models. So I'd say just go out there and see what's there. There's so much stuff for free that you can go and find out a little bit more about.
Yeah. Oh, thanks, Kira. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time now, but it's been really great to speak to you. And thanks so much for sharing your insights on a topic which you're obviously very passionate about too. So I'm sure you'll be able to inspire others to find out more information. So thanks very much for joining us today, Kieran.
Thanks, Elaine.
Back to me again. Lucky I'm not wearing the same top as I was on that day. But yeah, as you can see, you know, there's so many colleagues that we're trying to bring to you to share their different sort of experiences. And, you know, so far we've talked about storytelling and sharing your stories, your experiences, and using different ways of thinking to potentially enhance different products and different things. Now, you'll be pleased to know that the next person that I've got with me is actually here with me. We're live, we're beaming out. I'm not on my own today because I'm joined by my colleague Ellen. I can see you up there in the top of my screen, Ellen. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, thanks, Ellen. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you.
Oh, good. Well, thanks so much for joining us today. So just want to introduce you all to Ellen, guys. Now, Ellen, for those of you that join us every month, you might recognise Ellen because she was actually on Careers Live in September last year. We've enjoyed your company so much, Ellen. We've invited you back. And so we're really pleased that you're able to come back and talk to us again on Careers Live. So for those of you that don't remember Ellen, so Ellen, I'll start off with a straightforward question. So can you tell us a little bit about your own career journey and how you sort of came to work at Lloyds Banking Group?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd describe my career journey as sort of a squiggly career. And I don't know if people have heard that term before, but it's quite often used now in that you go through lots of different career paths before you sort of find where you are at now. And that doesn't have to be your end goal. Where I am now might not be my end goal, but it's something different to what I was doing a year ago and 2 years ago and 5 years ago and so on and so on. So yeah, I actually, well, growing up, I sort of done some retail jobs here and there, got that customer service aspect of things, barmaid, waitressing, all of those things. And then I did a degree in drama and acting. And it was after my degree in drama and acting that my friend was working at TSB when Lloyds and TSB were separate. But they were working at TSB and they had loads of job opportunities there on the phones in mortgages. So she sent me a link and I applied for a job and I was successful at getting a job at TSB. And that was literally just customer service, answering the phones, talking to people about their mortgage applications. At TSB, I did a few different jobs then. So started on the phones, then I moved over into processing. So that was actually looking at identification documents, for example, if people have sent in passport, driving license to verify themselves for their mortgage, working through that. And then eventually I moved over to communications and events. And that was what I thought really that I really wanted to do. And I love the event planning side of things. The communication side of things wasn't really for me. It wasn't what I expected. But with the events and the communication, we looked at the data on our website and where our most hits were and things like that. And that got me really interested in data analysis, which is why I then came to Lloyds. And I started at Lloyds on an apprenticeship. So I started on the level 4 data analyst apprenticeship. That was back in 2020. So completed that, was working in delivery within commercial banking, and have since now moved again into risk. So still doing data analysis, but from a risk perspective as opposed to anything else. So that's sort of a whistle-stop tour of the career. But yeah, lots of different career paths that has got me to where I am.
Yeah, it's funny actually, because the data analyst level 4 apprenticeship is probably one of our most popular programs, and there's a lot of people that join us because they're interested in data. And it's interesting because we've done a lot of careers lives where I think probably even you were on that one, and when we were talking about how a career in data can sort of take you anywhere, and it's interesting to hear where your starting point was and what you're doing now. So in terms of what you're doing now in like your actual day job, then can you tell us a little bit about what that is and what you're doing in that?
Yeah, so I specialize in data visualization. So the main tool that I use is Power BI. So it's a Microsoft platform and it's used to visualize data essentially. So depending on what we're looking at, we can look at multiple different things. We might look at a specific risk and take that risk and say, of all of our clients, how many of them have been processed correctly and there's been no risk in that process, for example. And so I'll take data, I'll ingest that into Power BI and then manipulate it to create these visuals. So I'll create bar charts that sort of show how many potential RMs or ADs or regions have dealt with that risk really well, and they're sort of green rated for dealing with that risk across the board on particular products, and how many are maybe struggling and need development put into their routine and training given to them. And so we can spot that through the different visualizations. We can spot trends and things through line graphs. So we'll look at it from a date overview and look at everything in the past 12 months. What trends are going on there? Is there anything that we need to call out? And a lot of it is it's trend spotting and looking at potential opportunities for training, or where change maybe needs to happen. If there's a lot of things happening on one product and we're getting a lot of issues in terms of from a risk perspective on that one product, it might be that we need to change the process because that process isn't protecting either our customers or ourselves as a bank. But bringing all of that data in and bringing it to life through those visualizations is essentially what I do, to then share it with the decision makers that decide what we do with that.
Yeah, I mean, even listening to you sort of talking about it, it's obviously something that you are quite passionate about and that you are obviously enjoying.
Yeah.
I mean, what would you say is the most interesting part of your role, Ellen?
I think it's just that there's always something different. So there's always something different to do. Every day is completely different. And always learning new things. Like there's so much about Power BI that I still don't know that's got to learn, but also Power BI in itself is constantly developing. So they're constantly upgrading the system. I suppose in the same way like Apple are constantly upgrading our phones, Power BI works in the same way. So it'll introduce new visuals, it can introduce new coding, it can introduce loads of different things, calculations that will help with your development. And so it's a constant learning curve. But the one thing I always say in terms of like the skill that I use most, and I suppose that's where it comes into what's interesting, is problem solving. A massive part of it is problem solving. So for me, like with a drama background, and I know obviously we're on this call about sort of creativeness, it's that ability to create something. So I'm still feeling creative. I get a lot of ownership over how the dashboard looks, what visuals I want to use. I like pastel colors, so I'm always using pastel colors and things like that, and bringing that story to life through the visuals and the creativity. But also it's constant problem solving. People will come to me and say, what's going on with this, what's going on with that, or we'll have a complete restructure. Like we had this week, we've had a restructure of our teams, so we then need to restructure the data and the hierarchy behind that, so everybody's getting the right data for themselves and their teams. So yeah, every day is completely different, and every day is a new learning curve.
Yeah, and I mean, from your perspective, by joining the group on an apprenticeship, obviously that's given you a good grounding in all of your data career, really, hasn't it? You've obviously learned a lot. You've got your professional qualification and everything. I mean, what we do have a lot of colleagues that join us on our apprenticeship schemes. What would you say to anybody who's thinking about doing an apprenticeship?
I think absolutely go for it. Like, I studied drama and acting. I loved drama. I loved acting. I still do some acting on the side as a hobby, but it's more of like a passion project. So then I have sort of my work with data analytics and my acting on the side. But I bring that creativity in, like I've just said, but the apprenticeship got me leaps and bounds ahead, really, in terms of my personal life goals than anything else ever has, to be honest. So I think because it's very vocational, but specific apprenticeship, the data analyst one, and you get a degree at the end of it, but also you've already got a job. So I came to Lloyds and the only background that I had in data analytics was some heat mapping off of some websites to say what things do people click on most. And that was literally it. That was all I had. And then I pulled on my drama background for sort of communication. I'm quite like confident speaker, and I'm bringing that element in. But other than that, everything was learnt on the job. So I came in as a beginner, but I was already employed and learning alongside that. And I think that was a huge positive to the apprenticeship, because it's not that you come in and then you have to fight for a job by the time you've got your qualification. You already have the job, but once you've got that qualification, you're then looking, okay, what's the next step? Where can I promote to? And as opposed to just looking for your first job post qualification, you're looking for your next step and your promotion with already having at least a year's, so it's 12 months to 18 months, I think the apprenticeship was when I did it. So you've got that 1 year to a year and a half worth of experience already. So yeah, it just opens up so many doors, and what I've learned is huge.
Yeah, no, like you say, there are, it is a great opportunity, isn't it? And what we say to anybody that joins the group really is that think of it as a foot in the door. You can actually carve out a career here at Lloyds Banking Group. It's not necessarily just like a job. So yeah, I mean, we're just getting some questions and things coming through. Ellen, we'll have a little look at those together before I move on to while I've got you still. So that's brilliant. Todd's saying that they can really relate to this. Todd's got a degree in jazz piano. It's great to hear that you can still keep your interests up outside of Lloyds. Question for you then, Ellen. How easy is it for you to act on the side, and does Lloyds help with this? So you mentioned you still got your sort of foot in the door, your foot on the side of the stage there as well.
Yeah, definitely. So it's really easy, to be honest. One thing, so what I do is I'm a scare actor at Halloween, and it's a seasonal event, so it's not constant, but I do have things throughout the year. So I run auditions and interviews for other actors to come in. And so if I ever have those, it's just in case I speak to my manager and say, oh, I've got an audition this evening. Do you mind if I finish early and I'll make up the hours? Or it could be that I'll book holiday. And then during Halloween, which is when it's a lot of time, I book holidays for it. But as long as your manager's aware and they're happy, and I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be, it's really easy, and everyone's really supportive. People are really interested. So my manager and their manager, they're always asking, oh, what's going on with your Halloween thing? What's going on with your acting? How was the audition? So absolutely, like, it's supported. They're happy for you to do it, and it's just how you manage that in your time. Like, I like to take my holidays for mine, and if it's only an hour here or there, a shortened lunch or something like that, but as long as you are managing that time, there's absolutely no reason you can't.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Ellen. Great. Well, we've got some fellow creatives definitely on the call today, which is great to see. And also we've got Scott, who's hoping to join Lloyds as an apprentice after a 22-year career in the armed forces.
Oh wow, fab.
Well, I'd give it that a thumbs up as well if I could actually do that whilst trying to talk to you at the same time, Ellen. So I'm not going to touch anything in case it all comes crashing down on me. But Ellen, thanks so much for chatting today. It's really, really interesting. Hopefully you'll stay on just while we've got a couple more bits in case there's any more questions. So what I'm going to do, thanks, Ellen. So hopefully, by chatting to some of my colleagues today, you can see, that creative careers, because they tend to be practical, they are actually ideal to pursue through something like an apprenticeship. And at Lloyds Banking Group, we have got a lot of experience of apprenticeships. I mean, I actually work in the apprenticeship team, and Just over 10,000 apprentices have started their journey with Lloyds over the last 10 years, and that is a lot of people. So just to tell you a tiny little bit about the world of apprenticeships and how you apply for those is my colleague Jen. She's actually at a live event in Manchester tonight promoting apprenticeships, but we caught up with Jen just before the weekend. So here's a little thing that Jen's recorded.
Hi everyone, so my name is Jenny and I'm an Apprenticeship Delivery Manager at Lloyds Banking Group. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you found it interesting so far. We often get asked about the roles that we offer in apprenticeships at Lloyds, so I just want to tell you a little bit about them and let you know a little bit about the application process as well. So we have various data and tech apprenticeships at Lloyds. We recruit into our cyber areas of the business, data analysts. We also have engineering, like software engineering and quality engineering roles, and business analysis. There are other apprenticeships that we offer across the business in the wider group. So we do offer apprenticeships right from customer services right through to things like finance and audit. So a real variation. The programmes tend to be between 18 months and 2 years long for the level 3 and level 4 programmes, and you get a qualification whilst you're learning in a permanent job. So really interesting opportunities to get your career started at Lloyds Banking Group. In regards to the application process, generally we would ask for 1 A level and to have got your Maths and English GCSEs. If you haven't secured Maths and English GCSE, there are other routes to being able to complete these as part of your apprenticeship, so it's not an immediate blocker to getting on the schemes. There's usually 3 stages in the process for application. So the first one would be an application and online assessment, and this will assess your strengths and skills. There would then be an interview if you get through to that stage, and that will often be face-to-face or a telephone call. If you then complete that stage, you would then be invited to an assessment day. And the assessment day would be made up of a number of kind of short challenges, and within this there'd be an individual interview. So a few different kind of steps there to go through. But if you're successful, we'd make you an offer to join the apprenticeship. And we usually start our apprentices on programme in March and September. I think my biggest tip across the process for apprenticeships would be just be yourself. If you share our vision and you're eager to learn and passionate about wanting to join the bank and obviously take all the opportunities that are put your way, then I would absolutely say we'd want to talk to you. Remember, we at Lloyds Banking Group, we recruit on strengths and we don't just look for experience. So you have as much chance as anybody when applying. And all that's left for me to say is I wish you all the best of luck with your future career, whatever path you take, and thank you for joining us today.
Brilliant, thanks Jen. So I just had a question that's just come up on the chat, and I've been trying to type and answer some of them, but I'll just answer this one verbally. So Harry, you've raised a really good question. So as you know, Careers Live comes to you on the first Tuesday of every month, and for the next one, which I'm going to come on to and tell you a little bit about it, the next Careers Live that is on the system is Careers for Problem Solvers on the 1st of August. Now, it does say on the site at the moment that the registration is momentarily paused. So the reason for that is because we are actually planning an all-dayer for Lloyds Careers Live, which is going to be taking place on the 23rd of August, which is going to be the day before exam results. So that's the reason why, Harry, that says that that's paused. There's not going to be one on the 1st of August, so we will look to get that updated. Okay, so just to answer that question. So, but I mean, in terms of today, I'm looking at the clock. We're nearing the end of our time this evening, but before we go, I did promise that I would share some resources to help you out. So first of all is the Lloyds Banking Group Early Careers website. Now, as well as when there are jobs, they're posted on there. There's details of our programs. There's the opportunity to interact with grads and apprentices, study resources and more. So if you want to hold up your phone to that QR code, that will be able to take you to that. And if there aren't any roles that are available or apprenticeships on there at the moment, as I think Javid has pointed out, you can actually register for job alerts for when things do become available. So there's also the Association of Apprenticeships, Association of Apprentices and Amazing Apprenticeships. Now, both of these websites, as you can see the links there, give you lots of insight around apprenticeships and how to find them with whatever employer or career sector that you are interested in. Okay, so as of today, all of these sessions are all about talking to you about different careers. It's not necessarily about coming to work for us within Lloyds Banking Group. So lastly, if you missed any of the previous Lloyds live sessions, or you'd like to rewind tonight's event or anything that you might have missed, you can catch the replay of this and all the other sessions on our Lloyds Banking Group Careers YouTube channel. Okay, so again, there you go. There's some information on the screen about that too. So here are the links just one more time. You can scan the QR code or follow the link in the chat that is being put in there now. So as I just said, Careers Live in August is really going to be a little bit different to what we normally do with our once a month thing. So if you're in year 11, then join us on the 23rd of August when we're going to be running a whole day. So it's an all dayer of Lloyds Careers Live. We're going to be looking at the different pathways ahead for you in year 12, 13 and beyond. So it's going to be the usual, lots of career hints and tips. Most importantly, support for your mental health. It's going to be a big and busy day ahead of your results. So I really hope that you're going to be able to join us for that. So until August, let me wish you all the very, very best and success wherever your careers take you. And thank you so much for joining me today. And for those of you that are listening to the recording, and especially to my guests too. Thanks, everyone.
What does success mean to us?
Success is making a difference.
For our customers and our communities.
Success is empowering people from the start.
Building their confidence.
Giving them tools to start their careers.
Success is putting our people first.
It's knowing when to listen.
And making the time to talk.
Success is supporting causes we care about.
It's getting involved.
All hands on deck.
Success is making banking better.
It's engineering a fairer future.
Making progress and leaving no one behind.
Whatever shape it takes.
Success starts with us.